Driving around Alaska this summer? Don't forget to check out these 5 exciting and adventurous roads. Alaska is a really big state. In fact, it's the biggest one in the US, but it doesn't have all that many roads. And so there's kind of a main circle loop of road that you'll likely drive if you're doing a road trip around Alaska. And a lot of that is paved road and fairly easily accessible. I didn't find those roads to be too challenging, although I did get one flat tire. I must have run over some debris on the highway when I was outside of Palmer, Alaska. But today I'm going to focus on 5 of my favorite, a little bit off the beaten track roads. So these are going to be gravel/dirt roads, roads that are recommended for 4x4 vehicles, although I definitely saw vehicles that were not 4x4 on these roads, so you don't have to have it, but it's just recommended. Higher clearance vehicles recommended. And then these are, of course, are the roads that you need to be prepared on. So bring an extra full-size spare tire, have extra gas, and be prepared, because if something does happen on these roads, it may take a little bit longer for people to get to you. And in addition to bringing emergency supplies, I also recommend that you bring some type of paper guide for the roads that you're going to be on. A lot of these roads did not have cell service for the full length of the road, and so it's important to come prepared. I really enjoyed my milepost guidebook, so I used this a lot this past summer. It had all the roads going up to Alaska. It had the Dempster Highway in it, and then it also includes all of the roads inside of Alaska itself. And so the milepost guidebook does kind of a mile-by-mile guide of what's on the roads. So it lets you know where the next gas station is, lets you know what sites are off to the side of the road or where hiking trails are, that kind of thing. And so if you're going to be doing short traveling there, you maybe don't need the whole guidebook. But if you're going to be spending a fair amount of time like I did this summer, you might want to invest in a guidebook for Alaska. So that milepost guidebook is there. All right, so let's start taking a look at each of these individual roads. The first road on my list is Denali Highway. Denali Highway is a 134-mile long road that runs from Paxson, which is off of the Richardson Highway, to Cantwell, which is on the Parks Highway. When this road was first built, it was the only road that would get you to Denali National Park. The Parks Highway has since been completed, and so you can now get to Denali National Park a little bit easier, but that Denali Highway is still there, and it cuts across the interior of Alaska from Paxson on the Richardson Highway to Cantwell on the Parks Highway. This highway was stunning. I mean, there are mountain views for days. So when we drove this road, we went from Paxson to Cantwell. So we were driving from east to west. And the Alaska mountain range was off on the right-hand side of that road for almost the entire drive. It was absolutely gorgeous. The first 21 miles of the road are paved, and then the last 3 miles of the road are paved as well, but the space in between is a kind of dirt gravel highway. The road was really in good condition when we drove it. We were warned that this could be a pretty potholy, rough road, and honestly, it wasn't too bad for us, but still be prepared. You're going to want a couple of days to drive this road, although you don't need it. This road can be driven in a single day, but if you take your time, there are plenty of pullouts that you can camp at. There are short hikes that you can take, and you can spend so much time kind of immersed in this area if you want to. I personally love those boondocking campsites where you can pull off on the side of the road and spend a night all by yourself surrounded by nature. Most of the campsite spots really aren't that far off the road, so you will have a little bit of traffic noise periodically, but it's really quiet on that road at night. And so mostly you'll see a few people in the evening and then a few people in the morning, but you'll have the night to yourself. One of the highlights of this road for me personally was that if you drive it in the orientation from east to west, you get a chance of seeing Mount Denali as you get towards the Parks Highway. And I was so lucky to be able to catch a little tiny glimpse of Mount Denali as we approached. We didn't actually see Mount Denali in the national park at all, so it was fun to have seen that little glimpse from the road. We did get a fantastic view of Mount Denali from Mount Denali State Park, which is a little bit south of the national park. And for those of you who don't know, Mount Denali, which was formerly known as Mount McKinley, is the tallest mountain in North America. So it's a fun one to see. The second road on my list is Hatcher Pass. And unfortunately, I didn't get to finish all of Hatcher Pass because my dog ended up with a medical emergency and we had to get off the road a little bit early. but the part that I did drive was stunning and gorgeous. Hatcher Pass Road is a little bit shorter than some of the others on my list. It's about 49 miles long, and it loops over Hatcher Pass with a top elevation of 3,886 feet. The road itself is an improved road for the first 17 miles from Palmer, and for the first 11 miles if you're driving from Willow, Alaska, but the rest of it is gravel. And a lot of the gravel part is full of like steep, narrow switchbacks as you kind of go back and forth across the mountain. And I hear there can be some good potholes and washboard, so drive slow and be careful. The road is open year round, but you're going to need chain/4-wheel drive to navigate it in the winter. One of the big reasons this area is so pretty is really just because you get up to elevation and are looking out over all these gorgeous areas of Alaska. So you're essentially getting some epic hike-worthy views from the road. But make sure you step out of your car at this area because the hikes in this area are some of my favorite in Alaska. Reed's Lake Trail, which I talked about in a previous video, was in my top 5 Alaska hikes. It was absolutely stunning. If you can get it on a nice day, it really can't be beat. So get off the road. Reed's Lake Trail is there, Gold Mint Trail is there, and there's a couple others further on up the road as well. You can camp on a couple spots along this road, but they are a little bit more formalized campgrounds. There's a few campgrounds that fill up really early, and then you can pay to park in some of the parking lots as well. So there's certain parking lots that are designated okay for camping. And so, take your time in this area as well and enjoy the drive, enjoy the hiking, enjoy the scenery. The next road on my list is one of 2 national park roads that are on the eastern side of Alaska in Wrangell St. Elias National Park. Now, this national park is very big, and you can only drive into a limited portion of it, but the areas you can drive into are worth the drive. So the first road I'm going to talk about is McCarthy Road. McCarthy Road is mostly gravel. It's 58.8 miles long, and it runs from Tina to the Kennecott River. And so you do have to take another road into Chitina, and then it turns into McCarthy Road from there. So it's a longer drive from another highway, but it's paved until you get to Chitina area, or Chitina. The big draw of this road, although the road itself is pretty and full of adventure, is to get to a popular area of Wrangell St. Elias National Park. If you drive to the end of this road at the Kennecott River, you can camp there. There is a fee to camp there. And then you can walk across the pedestrian bridge over the Kennecott River and pick up a shuttle or you can finish walking, but most of us pick up a shuttle to get to the historic Kennecott Mines area. This area is stunning. So you've got all the historic buildings of the old mine, which are neat and intriguing. I didn't spend a lot of time looking in them because I was there with my dog, but this is a dog-friendly national park. And so we walked through the old kind of mill town. And then there are a few hiking trails at this national park that are just amazing. And one of them, you can actually walk out onto a glacier without a guide. The Root Glacier Access Trail is a fantastic trail. So you get great views of the glaciers. You walk up to it and you can walk onto it. Just make sure you bring your crampons or some type of traction support for yourself. And then there are other beautiful hikes in the park as well. And the Root Glacier and the Erie Mine Trail are both on my top hikes in Alaska video as well. So if you're curious about the hikes there, check that one out. So the McCarthy Road, all in of itself, is a great drive. There are beautiful views and fun little one-way bridges and nice stops as you go. There's not much free camping on this road, or really any camping on this road. There's one campground kind of at the start of it. Otherwise, you're going to mostly just make it to the end. But if you do make it all the way to the end and decide to drive this road, make sure you head into the Kennecott Mines historic area. It is fantastic and well worth the time. If you're not interested in entering the historic mine area or going to the town of McCarthy, then this road might not be as fantastic as some of the others on the list, but I enjoyed the drive. I also there's an audio file that the national park has for the McCarthy Road and the next one on our list, Nabesna Road, as we'll talk about, that you can play like an MP3 file and get a narrated guide to the roads. So that's kind of fun as well if you like to learn about facts about the area as you drive. All right, so that's McCarthy Road. The other road in Wrangell St. Elias National Park, which I alluded to, is Nabesna Road. So that one is located north of where McCarthy Road starts. And the Nabesna Road was one of the first drives that I took when I entered Alaska. The Nabesna Road is about 42 miles in length. And honestly, it was one of the roads that was in the worst condition of any of the ones that I drove in Alaska. Now, I'm sure that road conditions vary quite a bit and depend on when the last time they were repaired or patched was. But even though the first 16 miles in the Nabesna Road are paved/chip sealed, they were full of potholes, and I ended up driving real slow to try to navigate around them. The remainder of the road is kind of dirt gravel, but all of the road is beautiful views off to the side. So you'll have mountains both to the north and to the south of you. The road travels southeast from the Tote Cutoff into Wrangell St. Elias National Park. And you can even see some views of Mount Sanford and Mount Wrangell from the road. Mount Sanford is the 5th highest mountain in the US with a total elevation of 16,237 feet. So that's a fun one to catch a glimpse of. And then Nabesna Road has some hiking as well, and it has fantastic camping opportunities. So there are so many areas on this road that you can pull off to the side and just camp overnight. Make sure you are in the areas where it's allowed. There's a few spots where you can't, but mostly you can pull off anywhere. I stayed at a wayside, so I had access to an outhouse and a picnic table, and it felt quite like luxury for spending my first night in Alaska, staring at mountains all by myself in this beautiful, beautiful space. But if you don't want to be that close to the road, there also are spots where you can pull off a little bit further that maybe don't have as many amenities, but are more secluded. So choose what you enjoy, spend some time in this gorgeous area. And again, even though this road could be driven in a day like some of the others on this list, I recommend spending a couple of days so you can really enjoy it, do some hiking, do some camping, enjoy the remote wilderness that Alaska has to offer. And then the final road on our list is potentially the most epic, the most challenging, and the most remote, the Dalton Highway. The Dalton Highway runs 415 miles north from its junction with the Elliott Highway all the way to Dead Horse/Prudhoe Bay. Dead Horse is an oil company town, and so when you get there, you're going to be a couple of miles from the Arctic Ocean, and there are some shuttle tours that can get you all the way to the Arctic Ocean, but mostly you're going to terminate at that little town, and you are supposed to register ahead of time that you're coming. The Dalton Highway was built alongside the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, and so a lot of its construction was made to support that oil industry. And its other name, it's also known as the Haul Road because of all the trucks that run up and down carrying supplies. So be careful when you drive, as sometimes the semi-trucks can throw up a lot of road debris, and it can be a higher risk for a chipped windshield while you're driving this road. I personally did not drive all the way to Dead Horse. I stopped at Galbraith Campground, which is about 100 miles short of the end of this road. I was planning on visiting the Arctic Ocean in Canada at Tuktoyaktuk off the Dempster Highway, and I did do that. If you've watched my other videos, you'll see that I have a Dempster Highway video as well, and that was a very fun road. The Dalton Highway is similar to the Dempster, but they definitely have different feels, especially with the Dalton being more of a support road for the pipeline, and there's no pipeline alongside the Dempster. The Dalton Highway goes through a lot of different terrain types. It's going to pass through forested valleys, over the Brooks Mountain Range at Adigan Pass, and then it'll go through the treeless North Slope as you're into the Arctic tundra. I really enjoyed the scenery along the side of this road. I thought the Brooks Mountain Range area was absolutely stunning. And Galbraith Campground, which is just north of Adigan Pass, had gorgeous, gorgeous landscape, lots of mountains. The flora fauna there was so unique and beautiful. If we'd had better weather, I could have spent multiple days here. It was absolutely stunning. Unfortunately, during my time driving, we had a lot of rain and mist and mud. And that's a note on the road. While the parts of this road are paved, a lot of it is dirt and gravel, and they use a calcium carbonate to help keep the dust down. If you drive when it's dry out, the road can be pretty dusty. If you drive when it's wet out, the road will be really muddy. And so you can see in pictures of my truck from this trip, mud caked all over. And so make sure that you get that washed off promptly after you get back to the town of Fairbanks. Fairbanks was the closest car wash that I came across easily. The calcium carbonate, if that mud cakes on is left too long, can really accelerate rust on your vehicle. So just make sure to wash all that off. And then because of how long and remote this road is, it is considered one of Alaska's most remote, dangerous, and challenging drives. So do make sure you bring those spare tires, extra gas, extra water, and food in case something happens alongside of the road. You want to be prepared to wait in place if you're waiting for help. But better than waiting is to self-rescue, so travel prepared. The guidebooks recommend planning at least 3 days to drive the Dalton Highway all the way up to Dead Horse. And honestly, I'd recommend a little bit longer if you want to enjoy the road. There's fun places to stop, like the Interagency Visitor Center, places to take a short or long hike. There's not a lot of official hiking trails on the Dalton Highway. There is one shorter one at one of the campgrounds that Glia and I did take. I think it's a few miles out and back, but that trail wasn't very well marked, so use a little bit of a choose your own adventure on the way out. You're allowed to walk on a lot of the riverbeds out, and then a lot of the area on the side of this road is BLM land, which allows you to kind of just choose a route and walk through it. So, for example, up at Galbraith Campground, you really could just kind of walk towards the mountains. And Gates of the Arctic National Park is actually across the river from the Galbraith Campground. So some people do walk into that national park from that campground area. So lots of free hiking is allowed, just not a lot of official hiking trails. And while we're talking about BLM land, most of the campgrounds on this road are maintained by the BLM, which is the Bureau of Land Management. The campgrounds range in price from free to $5, $10. So most of them aren't very expensive. And that may change in the future if you're traveling in different years. But when I visited, they were pretty cost effective. And during my trip, it was easy to find a spot at any of them. So not very crowded. There were a couple of other campers at each of the places that I spent the nights. The busiest one was Galbraith Campground. That is arguably the most beautiful. I mean, you've got gorgeous mountain ranges, and I already talked about all of the flora, fauna there. It's a really nice spot to spend the night. But plan on staying at those campgrounds. You're not supposed to just free camp wherever off of this road. So make an itinerary that plans those campgrounds in for where you want to stop. But regardless of how far you travel on this road or what you enjoy, it is an epic road, well worth the time to explore and investigate. And if the weather is nice, I highly recommend driving all the way up. And if the weather's not nice, you could still drive all the way up. It's quite an experience and an adventure to remember. This road is also open year-round, but you're going to have to be extra prepared if you plan to drive it in the winter, as conditions can become extreme. This road was featured on the Ice Road Truckers. I think I'm saying the name of that show right. And so you can see how intense it would be in the winter. The Dalton Highway concludes my list of the 5 most exciting and adventurous roads to drive in Alaska. Now, I didn't drive everywhere, and there are plenty more roads in Alaska. So if you've driven any of these 5 roads and or others, please leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. All of us are driving in different weather at different times of year in different vehicles, and so our experiences can be so different. So do you agree with my list of top 5? Are there any roads that you would add? Any roads that you would warn people against? I'd love to see your comments below, and hopefully they'll help someone else who's planning a driving route around Alaska. But just to recap, we've got the Denali Highway in the center of Alaska. It drives you towards Mount Denali National Park, and you can even get some views of Mount Denali from the road. There's Hatcher Pass, which is a shorter road, but up to over 3,000 feet of elevation and some fantastic views. 2 roads in Wrangell St. Elias National Park, both of them with audio tours that you can enjoy as you navigate the potholes and the remote driving conditions. And then the Dalton, the big 415-mile drive all the way up to Dead Horse and Prudhoe Bay, where if you want, you can pay for a shuttle and even see the Arctic Ocean. And I'd highly recommend that if you're going to drive that far, you do see the Arctic Ocean. Just make sure that you register that you're coming with that oil field company, because there's a few extra protocols there. So I hope you're able to personally experience some of these roads, and thank you so much for watching.